As Emma lay frail in her hospital bed, her final wish fulfilled, she grasped her husband's hand and whispered, "I'm ready." Tears streaming down his face, David leaned in, knowing these were their last moments. The room was heavy with sorrow, yet filled with a quiet, profound peace. Watch as this heart-wrenching story unfolds, showing how love and compassion can bring comfort in the face of loss, teaching us how to offer peace to both the departed and the living. Don't miss this emotional journey. And if you like the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to make sure you will not be missing any story like this. Let's get started. Emma Turner had always been a hard worker. From the moment she stepped through the glass doors of Hamilton Industries as a receptionist 15 years ago, she knew this was a place where she could grow. She had started out answering phones and organizing meetings, but her sharp mind and keen organizational skills didn't go unnoticed. Slowly but surely, she climbed the corporate ladder, moving into administrative work, handling projects, and supporting the executive team. Though she wasn't in the spotlight, Emma's contributions were valued, and she felt proud to be part of something larger than herself. Hamilton Industries was more than just a company. It was a beacon of hope for many, built on principles of innovation, inclusivity, and diversity. The company's success had skyrocketed under the leadership of Isaiah Hamilton, its charismatic and visionary CEO. What set Hamilton Industries apart was not just its groundbreaking tech products, but also the way it treated its employees as family. Emma admired Isaiah Hamilton from afar. She had never met him in person, but his presence was felt in every corner of the company. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a symbol of resilience. A black man who had risen to the top in an industry where very few people of color held leadership positions, Isaiah's story was one of perseverance in the face of adversity. He was open about the challenges he had faced, growing up in poverty, experiencing systemic racism, and losing his mother to cancer when he was in his 20s. Yet, despite all of this, he had built a billion-dollar empire from the ground up, all while remaining humble and kind. Emma often watched Isaiah's interviews during company-wide meetings or on television. He spoke with such calm authority, never boastful but always confident in his vision. His dedication to the company was clear, but what Emma admired most was his dedication to his people. He cared about the employees at every level, making time to talk with everyone, from janitors to executives, during his visits to the office. He was a man who listened, a man who led not through fear but through understanding. Emma felt a personal connection to Isaiah, even though they had never met. His story reminded her of her own struggles, how she had worked her way up from a modest background, navigating the complexities of corporate life while balancing her responsibilities as a wife and mother. She admired his strength, and on days when work became overwhelming, or when life threw her a curveball, Emma found solace in Isaiah's resilience. But nothing could have prepared her for the curveball life threw at her just a few months ago. Emma had always been healthy. Sure, she had the occasional cold or flu, but nothing that ever slowed her down. That was, until one day, she began feeling unusually fatigued. At first, she chalked it up to stress. Work was busy, and she had been juggling her kids' after-school activities. But the fatigue didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. Soon, she started feeling pain in her abdomen, a dull ache that made it hard to sleep. Her husband, David, urged her to see a doctor. Emma, always the optimist, brushed it off at first, insisting it was probably nothing. But when the pain became unbearable, she finally went in for tests. What followed was a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, scans, and blood tests, each one more alarming than the last. The final diagnosis came like a punch to the gut: stage 4 ovarian cancer. Emma's world shattered. Sitting in the sterile doctor's office, her mind went blank as the oncologist explained the severity of her condition. The cancer had spread to other parts of her body, and while they could try aggressive treatment, the prognosis wasn't good. She felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. David sat beside her, holding her hand tightly, his face pale with shock. All she could think about was her 2 young children, Lily and Jack. How would they cope with losing their mother? How would David manage on his own? The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and quiet moments of despair. Emma tried to stay strong, but the treatments took a heavy toll on her body. Her hair began to fall out, and the once vibrant woman who had juggled work and family with ease now struggled to get out of bed some days. Through it all, David was her rock. He took time off work to care for her and the kids, but even his optimism couldn't mask the reality of the situation. As the weeks turned into months, Emma's health declined further. The treatments weren't working as they had hoped. The cancer was aggressive, spreading faster than the doctors could contain it. Emma, who had always been so full of life, now felt like a shadow of her former self. But even in the darkest moments, Emma clung to the things that gave her strength. One of those things was Isaiah Hamilton. She continued to follow his story, watching interviews and reading articles about his life. His ability to rise above adversity resonated with her in a new way now. She often thought about how he had lost his mother to cancer, yet somehow he had managed to carry on. He hadn't let grief consume him, and in that, Emma found hope. Isaiah Hamilton was more than just a CEO to Emma. He had become a symbol of hope and strength. Every time she saw his face on the company website or watched him speak at an event, she felt a surge of determination. He had faced incredible hardships in his life, growing up in a poor neighborhood, losing loved ones, and fighting against the systemic barriers that tried to keep him down. Yet, he had never given up. He had risen above it all, proving to the world and to himself that resilience could conquer even the greatest of challenges. Emma had always admired Isaiah's story, but after her diagnosis, she began to see herself in him. Like Isaiah, she was fighting a battle she hadn't chosen. Like Isaiah, she refused to let that battle define her. The cancer might have taken her physical strength, but it hadn't taken her spirit. As she lay in her hospital bed, often too weak to move, she would watch Isaiah's interviews on her phone, letting his words wash over her like a balm for her soul. He never gave up, she would tell David during their quiet moments together. He faced so much, but he never gave up. And neither will I. David would smile softly, stroking her hand as he listened. He knew how much Isaiah's story meant to Emma. It was more than just professional admiration. It was personal. In Isaiah, Emma saw a reflection of her own struggle, an unwavering will to fight, even when the odds were stacked against her. There were days when the pain was unbearable, when the chemo left her too sick to eat or even speak. On those days, Emma would close her eyes and think of Isaiah. She imagined him as a young man, dealing with the loss of his mother while trying to build his company from the ground up. She imagined the pain he must have felt, the loneliness that must have consumed him at times. But she also imagined the strength it must have taken to push through that pain, to keep going when everything inside of him probably wanted to stop. If Isaiah could do it, so could she. The more Emma thought about Isaiah, the more she realized that she had one last wish she wanted to fulfill. It wasn't about meeting a celebrity or shaking hands with a powerful man. It was about meeting someone who had unknowingly given her the strength to keep fighting, even when everything seemed hopeless. Emma didn't want to leave this world without thanking Isaiah for the impact he had made on her life. She wanted him to know that his story, his perseverance, had given her hope during her darkest days. One evening, as the sun set outside her hospital room, Emma turned to David with tears in her eyes. "I want to meet Isaiah Hamilton," she whispered. David looked at her, surprised. "Isaiah Hamilton? The CEO?" Emma nodded, her voice trembling with emotion. "He's been my inspiration through all of this. I don't know if it's even possible, but before I go, I just want to thank him. I want him to know how much he's helped me." David squeezed her hand gently. "We'll make it happen," he promised. Over the next few days, David began reaching out to Emma's colleagues at Hamilton Industries. He sent emails, made phone calls, and even posted on social media, sharing Emma's story and her wish to meet Isaiah. Emma's co-workers were quick to respond, moved by her courage and determination. They, too, admired Isaiah, and they wanted to do everything they could to make her wish come true. Within a week, the story had spread throughout the company. Employees from different departments started sharing Emma's story on LinkedIn and Twitter, tagging Isaiah in hopes of catching his attention. The hashtag #MeetEmma started to trend, and soon, it wasn't just her colleagues who were talking about it. It was the entire company. Isaiah Hamilton had always been a private man. Despite his success, he preferred to keep a low profile, focusing on his work and his family rather than the spotlight. But when his publicist brought Emma's story to his attention, he was deeply moved. He sat in his office, reading the emails and social media posts about this brave woman who had worked for his company for so many years, quietly fighting her battle while drawing strength from his story. Isaiah was no stranger to cancer. He had watched his own mother fight a losing battle against the disease, and he knew the toll it could take, not just on the person suffering but on their family as well. Reading about Emma's journey, he felt an overwhelming sense of empathy. She reminded him of his mother, strong, resilient, and unwilling to let the disease take away her spirit. Without hesitation, Isaiah called his assistant and made arrangements to visit Emma. It wasn't about a publicity stunt or media attention. It was about fulfilling the wish of a woman who had found hope in his story. Isaiah knew what it felt like to need hope, to cling to anything that might give you the strength to carry on. And now, it was his turn to give that hope to someone else. The hospital room was quiet as Emma rested, her body weak from the latest round of chemotherapy. David sat by her side, scrolling through his phone, trying to find the right words to continue spreading her story. Over the past week, he had posted Emma's wish to meet Isaiah Hamilton on various social media platforms. He sent emails to her colleagues at Hamilton Industries, explaining how much Isaiah's story had meant to her during her battle with cancer. The response was overwhelming. Emma's coworkers, moved by her strength and inspired by her dedication to the company, rallied behind the cause. Emails flooded in, offering help, sharing stories, and amplifying her message. Emma's story began to spread throughout the company like wildfire, with people from all corners of Hamilton Industries posting on social media, tagging Isaiah, and sharing Emma's wish to meet him before it was too late. David was touched by the outpouring of support. Every time someone new reached out, his heart filled with hope. Emma, though weak, smiled each time David read the messages to her. Her spirit was still strong, even though her body was fading. One afternoon, while scrolling through his phone, David noticed something extraordinary. The hashtag #MeetEmma had begun trending on Twitter. Employees and supporters from across the country were sharing Emma's story, and soon, her name was everywhere. People were tagging Isaiah Hamilton, hoping to catch his attention. Inside the headquarters of Hamilton Industries, Isaiah's assistant, Maria, was flooded with emails and notifications. One story in particular kept popping up, the story of Emma Turner. Maria, who had worked closely with Isaiah for years, knew he had a soft spot for his employees, especially those who had been with the company for a long time. When she finally read Emma's story in full, it moved her deeply. Without hesitation, she forwarded the information to Isaiah's publicist, hoping that it would reach him directly. Meanwhile, Isaiah Hamilton was in the middle of a busy workday, meeting with his executive team and planning the company's next major product launch. But as his day wound down, he sat in his office, taking a rare moment to check his emails and messages. One particular email from his publicist stood out. The subject line read, "You need to see this." Attached to the email was a link to a social media post that had gone viral. Isaiah clicked the link and began reading about Emma Turner, an employee at his company who was battling terminal cancer. As he read about her strength, her courage, and how much his story had inspired her, he felt an emotional weight settle over him. This wasn't just another fan or employee reaching out. Emma's story mirrored his own in many ways, and it struck a deep chord in him. Isaiah had never sought out the spotlight. His journey to becoming CEO was filled with hardships that he rarely spoke about publicly. He had grown up in a poor neighborhood, lost his mother to cancer, and faced systemic racism at every turn. But he had never let those challenges stop him. He had built Hamilton Industries from the ground up, always keeping his mother's lessons in mind. Lessons about kindness, empathy, and never giving up. Reading about how his journey had given Emma hope during her fight against cancer touched him in a way few things ever had. Isaiah leaned back in his chair, staring at the email for a long time. His mind wandered back to the days when he had watched his mother slowly fade away, her body weakened by cancer, but her spirit as strong as ever. He remembered how helpless he had felt during those days, and how much it had meant to him when people showed his mother kindness in her final days. Isaiah knew he had to meet Emma. This wasn't about publicity or fulfilling some corporate obligation. This was personal. Emma had worked for his company for years, and she deserved to know that her strength and courage hadn't gone unnoticed. Without hesitation, Isaiah picked up the phone and called his assistant, Maria. "I need you to arrange a private visit to see Emma Turner," he said, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "No press, no cameras. This is between me and her." Maria, who had been expecting this call, nodded on the other end of the line. "I'll take care of everything, Isaiah. You won't have to worry about a thing." Isaiah thanked her and hung up the phone. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment as he thought about the meeting that lay ahead. He had met countless employees over the years, but this felt different. This was about offering hope to someone who had looked to him for strength, just as he had once looked to his mother for strength during her illness. A few days later, the arrangements had been made. Isaiah Hamilton was scheduled to visit Emma at her hospital room in New York. Maria had coordinated with the hospital staff, ensuring that the visit would be kept private and that Isaiah's security detail would be minimal. It wasn't about creating a spectacle. It was about fulfilling Emma's last wish in the most personal and heartfelt way possible. The morning of the visit, Emma was having a rough day. The chemotherapy had left her feeling weaker than usual, and she struggled to sit up in bed. David, always by her side, tried to keep her spirits up, but even he could see how the disease was taking its toll. Her skin was pale, her frame frail, and the energy that once radiated from her was dimming. Despite her physical state, Emma was excited. She had heard the news just a day before. Isaiah Hamilton, her hero and the man who had inspired her through her darkest moments, was coming to see her. The excitement had given her a rare burst of energy, and she had spent the previous night talking with David about everything she wanted to say to Isaiah when he arrived. David sat beside her, holding her hand. "He's really coming, Emma," he said softly. "Your wish is coming true." Emma smiled weakly. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "I've looked up to him for so long, and now I'll get to thank him in person." Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. Even as her body failed her, she felt a sense of peace knowing that she would meet the man who had unknowingly given her the strength to keep going. A few floors down, Isaiah Hamilton arrived at the hospital. Dressed in a simple suit, he walked through the halls with a calm determination. The hospital staff had been informed of his visit, and they discreetly led him to Emma's room, making sure not to draw too much attention. Isaiah had insisted that the visit remain private, away from the public eye. This was about Emma, not him. As he approached the room, Isaiah's heart raced a little. Despite all his years in the spotlight, this moment felt different. He wasn't meeting a fan or an employee. He was meeting someone who had drawn strength from his story, someone whose battle reminded him of his mother's. Isaiah paused for a moment outside the door, collecting himself. Then, with a deep breath, he knocked softly and entered. Inside, the room was filled with a quiet stillness. Emma lay in bed, her head resting on a pillow, her eyes heavy but alert. David sat beside her, holding her hand, while their children played quietly in the corner. When Emma saw Isaiah walk into the room, her eyes widened in disbelief. "Hi, Emma," Isaiah said softly, offering a warm smile as he stepped closer to the bed. "It's so nice to meet you." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she tried to sit up, her weak body struggling against the weight of her illness. David gently helped her adjust, and she reached out a trembling hand to Isaiah. I can't believe you're here," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you so much for coming." Isaiah took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "The honor is mine, Emma," he said. "I've heard so much about you. You've been an inspiration to so many people at Hamilton Industries. I'm just sorry it took me so long to meet you." Emma smiled through her tears. "You've been my inspiration," she said, her voice shaking. "Your story, your strength, it's what kept me going through all of this." Isaiah sat down in the chair beside her bed, never letting go of her hand. "You're the one with the strength, Emma," he said softly. "I can't imagine the battle you've been through, but I'm honored that my story gave you some comfort. You've shown more courage than most people ever will." The room was quiet as they spoke, their voices low but filled with emotion. David sat beside them, watching as his wife's final wish came true. Isaiah's presence brought a sense of peace to the room, his calm demeanor and genuine compassion offering Emma the comfort she had longed for. They talked for nearly an hour. Emma shared stories of her life, her work at Hamilton Industries, and her family. Isaiah listened intently, offering words of encouragement and support. He shared his own experiences, talking about the lessons he had learned from his mother's battle with cancer and how those lessons had shaped him into the man he was today. As the conversation drew to a close, Emma's energy began to wane. Her body was exhausted, but her spirit was at peace. She looked at Isaiah, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered one last time. "You've given me more than you know." Isaiah leaned forward and gently hugged her, careful not to hurt her fragile frame. "You've given me more than you know, Emma," he replied quietly. "Thank you for reminding me why I do what I do." With that, Isaiah said his goodbyes, promising to keep Emma and her family in his thoughts. As he left the room, there was a sense of calm that settled over the space. Emma lay back in her bed, her eyes closing as she smiled softly, knowing that her final wish had been fulfilled. David watched his wife, his heart filled with both sorrow and gratitude. She had found the peace she had been searching for, and for that, he was eternally thankful. The day Isaiah Hamilton visited Emma Turner would remain etched in the memories of everyone present. It wasn't just the presence of a powerful and respected CEO in the room, but the deep emotional connection shared between him and Emma that made it unforgettable. Emma, who had spent so many months fighting an unwinnable battle against cancer, seemed to find renewed strength during their time together. After Isaiah left, the room was quiet, but the sense of peace was palpable. Emma lay in bed, her eyes closed, but there was a small, satisfied smile on her face. David remained by her side, holding her hand gently, while their children sat nearby, sensing that something special had just happened. For Emma, this moment was more than just meeting a man she admired. It was about finding closure. Over the months, Isaiah's story had given her hope, and now, in person, he had given her the strength to face the end of her journey with grace. There was a warmth in his words, a kindness in his presence, that brought her peace, a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. As the hours passed, Emma grew tired. The emotional high of meeting Isaiah had taken its toll on her fragile body, but it had also given her something invaluable, the closure she needed. She had faced many fears over the past months, fears of pain, of leaving her family behind, of the unknown. But now, with Isaiah's visit, those fears seemed to dissolve. She had accomplished what she had longed for, and that allowed her to let go of the anxiety that had weighed her down. David, too, felt a strange sense of calm. He had been holding on to his own fears and uncertainties for so long, trying to stay strong for Emma and their children. But now, as he sat beside her, he could see that something had changed. Emma's face was peaceful, her breathing even, as she drifted in and out of sleep. David wiped away a tear as he thought about how much this meeting had meant to her and to him. It was as though a heavy burden had been lifted from both their shoulders. Emma awoke later that evening, her voice weak but clear. "David," she whispered, looking up at him with tired eyes. "I'm ready." David's throat tightened. He knew what she meant. Emma had been fighting for so long, enduring the pain and exhaustion of her illness with unwavering courage. But now, with her final wish fulfilled, she was ready to let go. She had made peace with her journey, and David could see that clearly. He leaned down, kissing her gently on the forehead. "I know," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm proud of you, Emma. You've been so strong." Emma smiled softly, her eyes closing again. "I couldn't have done it without you." The next few days passed quietly. Emma's health continued to decline, but she was no longer fighting it. She spent her time with David and their children, savoring every moment, every laugh, every conversation. The visits from nurses and doctors became routine, but there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere. Emma's family and friends could feel it too. She was at peace. As the days turned into nights, Emma's condition worsened. The nurses had explained that it was only a matter of time, and David had prepared himself for what was to come. But even with all the preparation in the world, Nothing could fully ready him for the reality of losing the love of his life. Emma's final moments were peaceful, much like the days that preceded them. She was surrounded by the people she loved most: David, her children, and her closest friends. The hospital staff, who had grown fond of Emma during her stay, ensured that she was as comfortable as possible, administering pain relief to keep her free from discomfort. Though she was weak, Emma's spirit remained unbroken, and even in those final days, she continued to smile and reassure her family that everything would be okay. On the last morning of her life, Emma asked for a moment alone with David. He sat by her side, holding her hand as she spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "I need you to promise me something," she said, her eyes filled with the same determination that had carried her through the hardest parts of her battle. David leaned closer, his heart heavy with the knowledge that their time together was coming to an end. "Anything," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Emma squeezed his hand gently. "I need you to keep living. For the kids. For yourself. Don't let my passing stop you from finding joy." David's eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "I promise," he said, though the thought of a life without Emma was almost unbearable. "I'll do my best. I'll keep living." Emma smiled, a weak but beautiful smile that broke David's heart all over again. "That's all I want," she whispered. "For you and the kids to be happy." They sat together for a long time, the weight of their love and shared memories filling the room. David didn't want to leave her side, knowing that these moments were among their last. He wanted to hold on to her forever, but deep down, he understood that Emma was ready to go. She had fought hard, and now it was time for her to rest. Later that afternoon, Emma's breathing became more labored. The nurses, ever watchful, made sure that she was comfortable, but they too knew that the end was near. David and the children gathered around her, holding her hands, whispering words of love and gratitude. Emma's eyes fluttered open briefly, and she smiled one last time. "I love you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. David leaned down, tears streaming down his face. "I love you too," he said, his voice breaking. Emma's eyes closed for the final time, and a deep, peaceful stillness settled over the room. The beeping of the machines slowly faded as the nurses began to disconnect the equipment, giving the family their space. David held Emma's hand tightly, unwilling to let go, even though he knew that her journey had come to an end. In the quiet of that hospital room, surrounded by the people she loved, Emma passed away peacefully. David, though heartbroken, felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. He had kept his promise to Emma. He had been by her side through it all, offering her the support and love she needed to face her final days with courage. And though the grief was overwhelming, he knew that Emma was no longer in pain. She had found the peace she had been searching for. In the days that followed, the news of Emma's passing spread through Hamilton Industries. Her colleagues, many of whom had been deeply moved by her story, reached out to express their condolences. There were emails, cards, flowers, and heartfelt messages from people across the company, all sharing their memories of Emma and offering support to her family. Isaiah Hamilton, too, was informed of Emma's passing. Though he had only met her briefly, the encounter had left a lasting impression on him. Her strength, her courage, and her unwavering spirit had touched him deeply, reminding him of his own mother's battle with cancer. Isaiah, who rarely showed emotion in public, was deeply affected by the news. He sat quietly in his office after hearing about Emma's death, reflecting on the time they had spent together. It had been a small gesture, visiting her in the hospital, but it had meant the world to her. And in turn, it had meant the world to him. Isaiah had always believed in leading with empathy, in showing up for his employees in meaningful ways. But Emma had reminded him that even the smallest act of kindness could have a profound impact on someone's life. As he thought about Emma, Isaiah decided to honor her memory in a way that would reflect the values she had embodied. He quietly arranged for a donation to be made in her name to a cancer research foundation, ensuring that her legacy would live on in a way that would help others fighting the same battle. He didn't announce it publicly. There was no press release or grand statement. It was a private gesture, just as Emma would have wanted. Isaiah's visit had given Emma peace in her final days, but it had also given him something invaluable. It reminded him of the importance of connection, of showing up for people when they needed it most. Emma's courage had inspired him in ways he couldn't fully express, and he would carry her story with him for the rest of his life. For David and the children, the grieving process was long and difficult, but they found comfort in the knowledge that Emma had found peace before she passed. Her final wish had been fulfilled, and that gave them solace as they navigated life without her. The day Emma passed away was quiet, serene, and filled with the bittersweet weight of finality. Her family had gathered around her, her last breath leaving the world in a peaceful stillness. Despite the deep sorrow that filled the room, there was a sense of relief that Emma was no longer in pain, no longer fighting the battle that had taken so much from her. David sat beside her, still holding her hand long after her passing. Tears streamed down his face, but mixed with the sorrow was a faint feeling of peace. Emma had made her final wish come true. She had met Isaiah Hamilton, the man who had unknowingly been a beacon of hope throughout her cancer journey. That visit had meant everything to her, and David found comfort in knowing that she had passed with that sense of fulfillment. The hospital room felt both heavy with loss and light with the release of suffering. Emma's children, Lily and Jack, clung to their father, sensing the finality of the moment, but not fully comprehending the depth of what had just happened. They knew their mother was gone, but the complexities of grief were still far away in their young minds. The nurses entered quietly to offer their condolences, stepping around the family to begin the necessary formalities. They had come to know Emma well during her hospital stays, and many of them were genuinely saddened by her passing. The kind words they shared with David and the children were a testament to the impact Emma had made, even in her final days. In the days that followed, preparations for Emma's funeral began. David, though shattered by grief, took comfort in the steady stream of support from family, friends, and Emma's colleagues at Hamilton Industries. People sent flowers, cards, and messages, all expressing their sympathy and sharing their memories of Emma. Her courage and strength had touched so many lives, and that became clear as the stories poured in. One of the most touching moments came from Hamilton Industries itself. The company sent out a heartfelt message to all employees, honoring Emma's memory and her contributions over the years. It was a simple but powerful gesture, recognizing not just her work but the person she had been. Someone who embodied resilience, kindness, and dedication. Isaiah Hamilton, too, sent his condolences to the family. His private note to David expressed his admiration for Emma's strength and the honor he felt in having met her. In his message, Isaiah reiterated what he had told Emma during their visit. Her story had inspired him just as much as his story had inspired her. The funeral was a somber yet beautiful occasion. Held in a small chapel surrounded by friends, family, and co-workers, it was a testament to the love Emma had given and the love she had received in return. David gave a heartfelt eulogy, recounting the woman Emma had been, the devoted mother, the loving wife, and the fierce fighter who had faced every challenge life threw her way with grace. Lily and Jack, though young, each shared small memories of their mother, drawing smiles and tears from those gathered. Their words, innocent and unfiltered, captured the essence of who Emma had been to them, a source of comfort and joy, even in the hardest times. As the service drew to a close, David stood at the front of the room, holding back his tears as he looked out at the sea of faces that had come to honor his wife. He knew that Emma's legacy would live on in the hearts of everyone who had known her, but he also knew that the hole she had left in their family would never fully heal. Still, he had promised her that he would keep living, for her, for their children, and for the future they had built together. In the weeks following Emma's passing, life at Hamilton Industries carried on as usual, but something had shifted. Her story had left an indelible mark on the company, and her courage had inspired many employees to reflect on their own lives and challenges. It wasn't just the fact that Emma had worked there for so long. It was the way she had faced her illness with such quiet dignity that resonated with so many people. Isaiah Hamilton, too, felt the impact of Emma's story. He had visited countless employees over the years, but his meeting with Emma had been different. It wasn't about business or leadership, it was about connection. Emma had shown him that even in his position of power, There were things far more important than the day-to-day operations of a company. It was about the people, their lives, their struggles, and the ways in which he, as a leader, could make a difference. After Emma's death, Isaiah continued to reflect on their meeting. He kept her story close to his heart, using it as a reminder to stay grounded in empathy and humility. Though he rarely shared personal experiences publicly, those closest to him noticed a change. He spoke more openly about the importance of kindness, of understanding the challenges others face, and of leading with compassion above all else. To honor Emma's memory, Isaiah made a personal donation in her name to a cancer research foundation. It was a private gesture, done without fanfare, but it was a way for him to ensure that Emma's legacy would continue in a way that helped others. The foundation, which focused on funding research for ovarian cancer, was a cause that had deeply touched Isaiah due to his own mother's battle with cancer. But Isaiah didn't stop there. Inspired by Emma's courage and the stories of other employees who had faced similar challenges, he initiated a new wellness program at Hamilton Industries. The program focused on providing better healthcare support for employees and their families, ensuring that no one would have to face their battles alone. The initiative included expanded mental health services, more comprehensive medical coverage, and a company-wide culture of support for those going through difficult times. The new program was named after Emma Turner. It was a fitting tribute to a woman who had embodied resilience, grace, and the power of human connection. Emma's name became synonymous with the values that Isaiah had always tried to instill in his company: empathy, strength, and the importance of caring for one another, both in business and in life. David, though still grieving, was deeply moved by the company's decision to honor his wife in such a meaningful way. He knew how much Hamilton Industries had meant to Emma, and to see her name live on in the program that would help so many others brought him a sense of peace. It wasn't just about her work or her contributions to the company. It was about the person she had been and the lasting impact she had made on those around her. Lily and Jack, though young, would come to understand the significance of their mother's legacy as they grew older. They would hear stories from David, from Emma's co-workers, and from the company itself about how their mother had inspired so many people. Though she was no longer with them, her spirit would continue to guide them, just as it had guided those who had known her. In the months following Emma's passing, David and the children began to find a new rhythm in their lives. It wasn't easy, and the grief remained a constant companion, but there were moments of light amidst the darkness. Slowly, they started to rebuild, taking comfort in the memories they had shared with Emma and in the knowledge that her final wish had been fulfilled. David kept his promise to Emma. He continued to live, not just for the sake of survival, but for the sake of finding joy again. He knew that it was what Emma would have wanted. He enrolled the children in new activities, took them on trips, and made sure that their home was filled with love and laughter, even in Emma's absence. Isaiah Hamilton, too, carried Emma's story with him. It became a source of personal inspiration, a reminder of the power of resilience and the importance of leading with empathy. Emma had taught him, in her quiet and unassuming way, that being a leader wasn't just about success or innovation. It was about making a difference in the lives of those who looked up to you. It was about connection. Over the years, the wellness program at Hamilton Industries continued to grow, benefiting employees and their families in ways that Emma herself would have been proud of. Her name became a symbol of strength, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, there was always room for hope and kindness. Isaiah continued to lead Hamilton Industries with the same vision and passion that had brought him success, but with a renewed focus on the people behind the business. He knew that it was the employees, people like Emma, who made the company what it was, and he made it his mission to honor their contributions in every decision he made. As time went on, Emma's legacy became more than just a story within the company. It became part of the culture, a testament to the power of human connection and the impact that one life can have on so many others. For David, Lily, Jack, and everyone who had known Emma, her memory remained a source of strength and inspiration, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, love and kindness could light the way forward. And for Isaiah, Emma's story would forever be a reminder of why he had fought so hard to become the leader he was today. Not for fame, not for success, but for the chance to make a difference in the lives of others. The final chapter of Emma's life may have come to a close, But her story, her legacy, would live on in the hearts and minds of those who had been touched by her courage, her grace, and her unwavering strength.